Good morning. Today we're going to do something with all these pears. We got so many of them. It's going to be tasty. And of course, it's going to be weird. Come on. We're going to make pear jam. We're going to get started by we're juicing an actual lemon here that I forgot to buy at the store. But that's okay. Need about 3 or 4 ounces of this, should be fine. Oh, all of a sudden I think I need a break. So about 3 ounces of lemon juice, and we're going to get on to our next step. This just keeps them from browning. It doesn't really impact the flavor, so it's okay. Now we get to the exciting part. Peeling. You're going to want to peel about 6 pounds of pears. And we were fortunate enough that we have a friend of ours has had a pear tree emergency. Let us know that his pear tree, the branches were breaking because there were so many pears on it. And we get to his house and lo and behold, this pear tree is actually touching the ground. We took 2 5-gallon buckets and we walked away with about 40-45 pounds of pears, and we only did like 2 limbs. It was crazy. There was an easy 200 pounds of pears on this tree. You can just sauce these in the lemon juice when you get them done, and that'll help, like I said, it'll help keep them from browning. And if you don't have a scale in your house, 6 pounds of pears, it's about 10 or 12 of them. Being precise isn't a big thing in this kitchen, as many of you know. The first rule in this kitchen is there are no rules. It's more about taste and texture and consistency, and that comes later when we do the cooking. Now you see why when things go wrong, you occasionally hear the phrase, things went pear-shaped. These absolutely do not have to be perfect in any way, shape, or form, because you're just going to chop them up into chunks and then smash the daylights out of them in the pot later. And done. Now we're just going to cut them up. Doesn't have to be perfect, doesn't have to be pretty. Like I said, they're going to get the living daylights smashed out of them. And when you're done peeling, if you have a giant puddle of juice like I do, make sure it goes in there. It's all flavor, it's all good. So these stems should just come right off. Those you don't want to keep, those aren't any good. We're just going to quarter these. All right, straight down the middle, straight down the side. Then you can trim off any stems or bottoms. Cut these again. Get rid of any core. It's so slippery and juicy. And we're just going to rough chop these to bits about that size. And they go right back in the juice. And with that, we are done. Just a little side note here. You see how easily these are cutting. You can do them with one hand. If you have little ones in the house, this is really kind of a fun project for them. And depending on their age level and their skill level in the kitchen, you can have them just do that. You can have them pour the ingredients, you know, or you can have them do the whole thing. You can supervise, just, they're your kids, you tell me. Give these a toss in the juice. That'll help keep them from browning because they are going to sit for a while after our next couple of steps. To this, and I know, don't freak out, it's okay. What exactly do you think jam is? We're going to add 6 cups cups of sugar. I know, but that's what it's for. We're also going to add 3 tablespoons of Da Fuzz. It's our spice mix made for fruits and such. And, well, in my house, I make mead. So this is where I keep my honey. Yes, that's a 5-gallon bucket. And yes, it looks like I need to order some more. We're going to put about 2 cups of honey in here. It looks about right. And then we just stir it all up. Mix to combine, as they say. Honey really replaces sugar basically 1-to-1. And it is very, very good for you. There's a lot of benefits to eating honey. If you have allergies, it's good to eat a lot of local honey because it can sort of alleviate that a little bit. Honey is an all-natural sugar. If you like eating a lot of regular white sugar, don't ever look up a documentary on how they make it. It's disgusting. It's tasty, but still. I use a lot of honey because I make mead. Actually, while you're hitting the subscribe button, go down there and hit in the comments section and let me know if you'd like to see a video about mead. I've kind of been wanting to do one, but it's a little bit out of the realm of the channel. So let me know. Let me know what you think. Happy to be of service, as always. So now this is going to just sit. We're going to cover it up, and it's going to sit for about 6 or 8 hours. And that'll soak all the spices and everything into the pears. The sugar will actually draw more juice out of the pears and add much, much, much more flavor, because inside each one of those tiny little squares, there's juice right in the middle, and you're not going to get to it unless you let it sit and macerate for a while. Alright, looks like we've got that combined. We're good to go. And we will see you this afternoon, my friend. Just a little side note, you can also let this sit in your refrigerator overnight if you need to. Like if you get home from work and you want to do part tonight and part tomorrow when you get home, it can stay in your refrigerator up for 24 hours. I'm only leaving it for a few hours, so it can sit right out here on the counter. And we're back. Now we have to sanitize and prep our jars that we're going to put our jam in. And we do that just by putting everything in the water, a nice big pot, and boiling it for about 5 minutes or so. Should do the trick. And then we'll pull those out. But while that's doing its thing, we're gonna get to the jam itself. We just transferred everything over from our bowl after it sat for a while. Make sure it's nice and stirred up and there's no sugars floating around in there or any of that. And we're just gonna bring this up to a boil, and we're gonna boil it for 10 minutes. As this is coming up to a boil, and while it's boiling, just give it a little stir periodically. Make sure none of the fruit is stuck to the bottom. We're starting to boil here. You're going to want to watch this because it does have a tendency to boil up and over if you're not careful. Just give it a few little stirs. It'll settle back down. If you need to, you can pull it off of the heat too. Once you start to feel this get seriously thick like it's doing right now, you can take it off of the heat and take the magic potato masher to it. You're going to want to break up as much or as little of that fruit as you want in there. This can be super chunky, it can be super thin, doesn't matter, it's up to you. You can see these pears are taking zero effort and they're just kind of liquefying, they're disappearing as I'm pushing down. Now you're going to want to bring this up and let it boil for another 5 minutes or so. Or if you've got one of these handy, you stick a candy thermometer in it and you go up to about 220 degrees. We are there. These things are so hard to read. But we are there. And I usually let it go for another minute or so just because I like mine a little bit thicker. And just kind of keep checking in on this to make sure nothing's stuck to the bottom and until it settles down finally. Let's see about what we've got there. Still looks a little bit on the thin side, so I'm going to let it go for a few more minutes. Jars have been boiling away over here too while we've been doing the whole thing. So we're going to start pulling those and getting them ready to fill. As you're doing this, give your mixture a stir. That way you get a more even amount of fruit per jar. And you're going to want to fill these up almost all the way to the top. Yeah, before you put your lids on, just make sure you go over each one with wet paper towel or cloth. Just make sure they're nice and clean up on the top so you get a good seal. Once you've done that, it's time to add your lids. And they just sit right down on top. In case you missed it, everything on here is like lava, super hot, so be super careful. Once you got your lids on, go back and put your rings on. And these, this is always the fun part because they're super hot. Just kind of want to tighten them down just beyond finger tight, which is convenient because they're usually hot enough you can't do much more than that. These go back into your big pot. They process in there for about 10 minutes. And what that does is pushes any of the air out through expansion. Make sure that your lids are nice and tight. It also creates an environment that is too hot for bacteria to live in. So you have an environment that's too hot in a vacuum, in a zero oxygen and anaerobic environment. And that's what canning's really all about. Canning and preserving. Once you learn how to do that part, you can pretty much can just about anything. And there they go. If you see any little bubbles or anything coming out like in here, don't worry about it. It's just little air escaping from inside the rings, or maybe even inside the jar. It's all good. Alright, let's pull them out. And we're just going to pull these out and let them cool. That's all there is to it. Now you just wait for the little buttons on top to pop in and you'll hear them. You'll hear them all the way across the house. And once they've cooled all the way down, you tighten those rings down. Maybe make a label for them or something like that. But it's real simple. Anybody can do it. You can do this for sure.